Welcome to the PD Chat Show. I'm delighted, obviously, to be back this week with my regular panel member, Pete Cater. How are you, Pete, today?
Hello, I'm very well. I'm having microsurgery on my right eye without any anaesthetic on Monday morning, and I'm really looking forward to it. Can't
So
wait.
there we go. So he'll be able to see all your lovely comments coming up. And tonight, obviously, is a special guest. Not just in my eyes, but Pete as well. But in the eyes of many, many people. The man that is, the legend that is, the drummer that is, Mr. Garry Allcock. How are you, Gary?
I'm very well, Matt, thank you. And thanks for inviting me to participate this evening.
No problem at all. But the thing is, as people sometimes probably realise, Gary's obviously been at many events of sort of the PDC, if you follow a member. Reason obviously for that is obviously yes, he supports everything that we do. He supports everything in the drumming communities that he does. But this obviously is spawned from the UK National Drum Fair, which you are still the chairman of, and so theoretically you are the chairman of the Palace Drum Clinic, because this is more like a sort of sideline outreach, but obviously it's becoming an entity on its own. So that's, the connections there, and we do talk about you quite a lot as well, because obviously everything comes back to you. While people are basically just like, just logging on, the conversation we always start with, so, why your comments are coming in. If obviously you want to put a comment to join in the conversations, please put it in the comments section below. I'll be able to see it, and then we'll read it out. Then we can ask a question or a story or anything that you feel you want to actually share, because obviously a lot of people do actually watch the actual comments as well. Tom Lang, hey Tom, everyone's joining on, fantastic. So if you're watching on replay, please tag #replay. And if you're not aware, the Palace Drumming Club as well, which is an interactive site. There's some videos, live videos, and stuff like that, tutorials. People are sharing stuff on there. Well, please go to there, because obviously there's lots more to come. Not just basically during this period of time, but in the future as well. We're building up many, many things. So, Ian Stocks, good evening, gentlemen. Greetings from Newcastle. Thank you, Ian. Well, greetings from Redditch,
Hi,
and
Ian.
obviously everywhere else.
I,
So we always start off with like a little conversation. Now it's because obviously Gary's our special guest. Is we don't like to say, Gary's very young, outlooking, but obviously Gary, you have been around for a number of years. You like to say 20 years plus VAT, but VAT's come down recently, so I don't know how long that's going to be. Um, but you've seen a lot of the generations, haven't you? Obviously, with yourself playing quite early on, obviously through to you're still playing fabulously well right up to lockdown, weren't you? So, what have you seen in your years of being in the music industry? What has changed for you in drumming sense, in musical terms? What's been the biggest kind of I don't know, impact on you, whatever? So, what's changed?
well, it's a good question, really. I mean, when I started, which was a long time ago, way back in 1950s, to be honest, mid 1950s, you just bought a drum kit and hopefully got involved with a local band, and off you went, really. And I think the thing for me, what I used to think really was that you needed to have a certain amount of luck. There's no such thing as luck. To me, luck is about when preparation meets opportunity. And I did lots and lots of preparation, in as much as I took drum lessons only for about 6 months, actually. And then basically I just went out and about watching the great players of the day, the Kenny Clares and the Ronnie Verrills and the Eric Delaney's, and bored them to tears, I think, with getting to know them, but they seemed to accept me over a period of time, and I learnt off them. I don't know whether you can do the same thing these days, because the majority of high-profile drummers are probably a lot more difficult to get hold of from a one-to-one situation, because if you go along to a gig, like I'm suggesting that I did all those years ago, it was fairly easy to go up and you waited until they'd stopped playing, and then you go up and introduce yourself, and they either tell you to go away or they're sympathetic because they think you're keen, and they'll chat away to you. I don't quite know whether it's the same thing these days. I just think that the high-profile drummers these days are, unless they're going to do like a seminar or a clinic or something where you can get close up. If you just go along to a gig, then what with security and all the other situations that, well, we're all in, not just at the moment, I mean, under normal circumstances, I think it would be quite difficult to do what I did, really. So from my point of view, I found, providing you were prepared to put yourself out, you've probably got to travel a bit, but to me, that all came under the preparation side of things, so that when you got the opportunity to get a gig, you'd learnt a lot from the top people of the day. Can you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And sorry, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, those days, and in a very small way, even now, if a drummer you were interested in was playing somewhere, and they'd be playing in a ballroom or a theatre or something like that, you just go there and just go in the nearest pub to the theatre, and you'd find them there.
Absolutely.
It was all a lot more. It was, I don't know, informal. Is that the best way to describe it? What I'm very interested in, Gary, is because of our, we have so much personal history and friendship going back decades and decades and decades.
Well, I can remember you from a very early age, Pete, when your dear father was the.
I'd actually like to go back to into a time before I was even a thing, and I'm sure many of the viewers would be interested to know, as a young player starting out in one of the more significant music cities in the United Kingdom at the beginning of the 1950s. What was the local scene like back then in Birmingham? I mean, one or two people I have either heard anecdotally or remember people like Tommy Webster. Who were the big drummers in Birmingham when you were starting out?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Probably Tommy Webster, really.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to, with our modern resources, Google and everything else, I've tried to do a bit of research into Tommy, because he's the guy everybody talks about. My dad knew him very well. I had lessons from him, but there's, you can't find anything. You can't even find a picture, a recording, nothing. There seems to be about as many. There's almost no evidence, and this is disappearing into history. And
I think I think I can.
Tragedy what.
I think I can find you a picture of him, Pete.
Right.
When I was probably, this is where I'm talking about preparation, really, ready for when opportunity presents itself. I lived out in Redditch. I mean, I'm up in Birmingham these days. But when I'd be about 13 and a half, 14, and I was trying to decide whether to be a fighter pilot or an astronaut. And
both worked out well for you, yeah.
Yeah, it worked out really well.
There wasn't much call for astronauts in Birmingham back then, as far as
there wasn't. you'll see in a moment where this conversation is.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of space cadets here, but there we go. Carry on.
So I joined the Air Training Corps cadets.
Right.
143 squadron, sir, and all that. And they had a band. Okay. They had a band, and so I started playing in the Air Training Corps cadet band when I was like 14. And then I discovered, I forget what the film would be. Would it be, was it Ship Ahoy? Somebody out there will know. With
Tommy Dorsey.
Yeah, I think it's a Tommy Dorsey or is that Artie Shaw? I can't remember, but
Ship Ahoy is Tommy Dorsey. It has the opening sequences, the Hawaiian War Chant with
that's right. Well, I discovered that and found out that you could play on more than one drum at a time, you know. So, but if I'm honest with you, I used to get up on a Saturday morning, travel from Redditch upon the 147 bus into Birmingham, which was a marathon in those days, and I'd have my drum lesson at Jack Woodruff's music shop, and
yes.
you know that one, Pete. And then
of course,
after my drum lesson, I'd wander down to the bottom of Snow Hill to Yardley's and have a look at the drums that I couldn't afford. But in the afternoon, I would go and sit on the balcony in the West End ballroom, have a cup of coffee, and I would watch Sonny Rose's band with the great Tommy Webster. And after a few weeks, I mean, I'm like 15 going on 16 now, and after a few weeks, I plucked up enough courage to go downstairs in the break and kind of introduce myself to Tommy. And he wasn't over enthusiastic at first, you know, but over a period of time, I think, you know, this a bit like when I met up with Kenny Clare, or eventually, you know, it's that blooming kid again, you know, and they realise that you're keen, and they accept you. And I used to sit at a table with Tommy in the break and talk to him. And he'd got an old Colton kit. I always remember his floor tom was like an upturned bass drum, you know, with the wooden hoops on the top, you know, at a period of time. But he was a hell of a good player. And one quick story. He was talking to me the one day, and he said, "Gary," he said, "let's see you do a single stroke roll. So just with your hands." So I just, as you do, on the table. Yeah, he said, no. I will show you how to do a single stroke roll. He said, in the second half, just keep your eyes on me. And so I went back upstairs, and Sonny Rose, at one point, to give the blowers in the band a break, he'd got one of these plastic Grafton altos, and he'd come out to the front and he'd play a busking tango. So he's going away there like bum bum ba da ba da da da, and off he goes. And on the second chorus, Tommy looked up to me and kind of gave me the wink, and without a word of a lie, for the whole 32 bars of the second chorus, all he did was this fantastic single stroke roll. And at the end, he's going, it went da, 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 da. And Sonny Rose never even turned round. It was just ridiculous, you know, absolutely ridiculous. And at a later stage, when I joined Billy Walker's band, because for the first 15 years of my life, I worked in all the Mecca and top rank ballrooms in Birmingham. You know, the old casino, the Locarno, the Tower, the Mayfair banqueting suite. And when I was at the casino, I wasn't available in the daytime during the week, and it was 5 nights a week, and a Monday and a Wednesday and a Saturday tea dance. And Tommy Webster used to come and do my depths on the Monday and the Wednesday, and then he'd come round on the Saturday afternoon to get his money. And I can see him now when he comes in. He got a bit of a, you know, in those days, a lot of people wear the kind of very light Macintosh, you know, not quite like Frank Sinatra's, which was a nice, you know, clean one, but Tommy had got this kind of dirty, whitish, what originally was that, you know, not quite white, and he got a plastic bag with clanking beer bottles in it. Now this was on a Saturday afternoon, this was, you know. But I've got very, very fond memories of Tommy. And just quickly, talking of Tommy Webster, Phil Seaman, who I'm sure you know, Pete, was from Burton-on-Trent, and Tony Kingsley, who was from not a million miles from where you grew up in Sutton Coldfield.
Right, that's right.
They both used to go and watch Tommy Webster. And I believe, I seem to recollect that Tommy told me that he was offered the job with, I think it was Ambrose, and he went down to London and did the audition, and he was offered the job, but he didn't, either he or his wife, he didn't want to leave Birmingham.
No, that's right.
And I can remember reading an article, I don't know, I think it was probably in Crescendo magazine some years ago. It was written by Phil Seaman, and he spoke very, very highly of Tommy Webster, and he said that he was one of the best drummers that he'd ever seen, and his talents were buried obscurely in a palais ballroom in Birmingham. You know? Yeah. But wonderful Tommy Webster, great.
Well, thank you, Gary. It's lovely stories. As I say, also Jerry Morrison says, "What amazing stories." Just a few highs. So basically, got need to say hello to one. Obviously, we said hello to Ian Stock, Jerry Morris, Richie Burns, Ken Russell, Everett, at Chamnad, Aileen Hennison. Thank you very much. Jim RG, Malcolm Phillips. Malcolm says hi. Gary, Matt, and Pete. Ian Palmer. Hi, Ian. Hope you're doing well. Hope everyone's doing well through it. Ross Sidaway, Paul Brown. You know, there's some fantastic, got some questions. We'll come to those later. We just want to sort of carry on this conversation. Just to basically sort of hit on what Pete was saying, Gary. What was just like, just describe to people how busy a scene, because people always hear about the London scene kind of stuff, and obviously, yeah, just like the Northern Orchestra, stuff like that. But what about the Birmingham scene? How busy was it? You know, because obviously you had a few pieces, obviously you described, you know, sort of the dancings of the Meccas, like the casinos and all that. There's obviously, you know, when it comes to sort of the recording stuff as well, Pebble Mill. But how of a influence was the Birmingham scene back in the 50s and 60s?
Well, from the point of view of the market that I was in, I mean, I've always been basically like a jazz, in inverted commas, a big band enthusiast. And I can remember in 1956 going to Birmingham Town Hall and seeing the Stan Kenton Orchestra for the very first time. And that really fired me up. And I went down as I say, down the big band route, playing in all these different ballrooms. But you were never, I was never actually out of work for probably 15 or 16 years. I could be working 4, 5, 6 nights a week in a Mecca ballroom, and then somebody, you'd get kind of headhunted, really. Somebody would be leaving another band, and they'd heard of you, hopefully some good things, and you'd get the call, and you could hand in your notice and give a fortnight's notice, and then 2 weeks later, on the following Monday or Tuesday, whenever the ballroom was open, you could start with the next band. And for me, that went on for 15 or 16 years. Obviously, in the 60s, once the kind of the more commercial pop market came in, there was many of the pop bands from Birmingham, which were very, very influential, of course. You know, I mean, I'm sure everybody looking and listening tonight will know all the famous Birmingham bands. But I never really got involved in that side of it. I was too busy doing what I was doing, really.
Mm. So,
I mean, the recording side of things, you mentioned Pebble Mill, Matt. I mean, that must have been, when they built Pebble Mill, that must have been, I was with Joe Ward's band at the Top Rank Suite at the time, and we were doing about 4 to 5 nights a week, and then 6 nights in the winter season, because we did all of the functions, you know, Rackham's, Boots, Littlewoods, all the famous stores in Birmingham. They had all their kind of Christmas dues at the Top Rank Suite. And Joe had got a really superb band. It was like 3 trumpets, trombone, tenor, baritone, keyboards, but John Collins, Pete, was playing Hammond organ.
Okay.
Yeah, John Collins playing, I mean, wonderful sax player, but he was playing Hammond organ in the band. Cedric Whitehouse on guitar, Robbie Robinson bass guitar, and me on drums. And we were doing, Joe was very into bands like Blood, Sweat and Tears and Chicago.
Oh yeah.
And it was that era, because I think we started at the Top Rank Suite in about, I don't know, it'd probably be about 1968, 69. And then it went on until about 1973, I suppose. But the BBC, I think they must have built Pebble Mill.
About 1970.
It's not, yeah, well, early 70s, I was about to say. Because the BBC used to do an outside broadcast. Every Saturday night, they'd go around different venues all over the country, and they would do an insert for half an hour live, and it was called Ray Moore's Saturday Night Out. And Ray Moore particularly liked Joe Ward's band at the Top Rank Suite, so every 6 weeks we would do a live half an hour slot. You know, you'd turn up for the gig on the Saturday, and there'd be 3 or 4 big BBC vans out round the back where they're bringing all the gear in. And, so you had a bit of extra money as well, so that was nice. But I think because of that, the producer, and through Ray Moore, he liked Joe's band, and when they opened Pebble Mill, we actually did the very first 2 days at Pebble Mill, nothing to do with broadcasts going out to, over the airwaves, purely to check all the equipment. And I can remember that quite distinctly, you know. And then ever after then, of course, we were doing quite a few broadcasts, and I did all kinds of, you know, Jeff Murphy's band, Freddie Brinklow's band, Brian Pearsall, lots of broadcasts from Pebble Mill. And it's when I go into the city now, which isn't very often, and I go past Pebble Mill, and it's not there. They knocked it down, and they've built a dental hospital. Okay, we all need to go to the dentist occasionally, but
you feel a bit down in the mouth about it,
It was a purpose-built building, and of course we did some TV things there as well. But they moved it up to, well, of course it's all gone up to
Mailbox.
Salford,
Mailbox. I can remember actually, it's like when they moved Pebble Mill to actually the Mailbox in Birmingham. I actually went think it was literally a year afterwards. I actually went to do some recording in one of the studios. So I think they recorded the Archers. I can't remember which studio it is now. But they obviously still had all the engineers now. And I had a chat to them and said, "Are you sad about Pebble Mill?" And I said, if they spent half of what they did on Pebble Mill as a site there, then actually transferring actually into the mailbox, they will have most probably the best recording facilities in Europe.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
As I say, when I went there, I obviously had to take loads of gear, and there's one access lift, which is basically for not for the BBC there, but actually for every shop and restaurant as well. So you have to get rather than drawing up, open your doors, straight in, straight out, kind of thing. So it's sad, but there we go. Got some other big...
what I was going to say, Matt, sorry to interrupt you, but you're saying about what the opportunities were in those days. I mean,
yeah, well, the influence as well, yeah, because obviously there's a lot of opportunities to say, you know, Tom Lane said the Birmingham scene in the back in the 60s was fantastic. Lionel Rubin was another top Brummie drummer, but what was the influence on Birmingham as a scene?
I don't know is the answer to that.
Because you was too busy in it, I suppose. Was that the question, the answer?
Well, I think fairly obviously most of what was happening is going to be London, and then it was either Birmingham or Manchester, really, and it just depended what genre of music that you were into. As to what you did, I mean, I was fortunate. I was going to say lucky, but I'm going back to lucky. I think I'd done my preparation, and when the opportunity arose, I was prepared for it. But dear old Lionel Rubin was at the ATV studios doing the lunchtime show, and I was lucky enough to know Lionel, and I did quite a few depths for him in that was a lunchtime show, and 5 days a week, but I nearly always did it under fairly difficult or tragic circumstances. When his father died, because he was living in London and coming up to do the gig, and I'd go in for a week and do that, and then when his mother died, and I think his brother had a car accident, and I went in and did it. But also, of course, there were other opportunities, like John Patrick was always very, very supportive of me. John Patrick was the musical director at Central Television, and they were doing New Faces, and then on the Sunday they were doing Bernie the Bolt with the Golden Shot. I wasn't the regular drummer on those. It was a dear friend of mine, Jerry Freeman. But Jerry Freeman was working with Shirley Bassey for, I think, about 12 years. And when Jerry used to go away with Shirley Bassey, I was lucky enough to do all the depths there. So there was all of those kind of opportunities in those days. And regrettably, it very, very, very gradually, it's like the recording scene in London. I'm sure Pete knows, you know, I mean, a lot of it is like Roy Rogers and Trigger. It's disappeared over the horizon into the sunset, really. There's some of it still there, you know, but nothing like it was.
Yeah, just a few hellos. Andrew Thomas, Josh Holmes, Richie Burns says, love watching the Kenny Ball Band Saturday night at the Mill with Ron Bowden on drums. So it's great. Pete, were you the tail end of this, like, I suppose, the golden years in the Midlands? Did you ever see the likes of what Gary's talking about?
Yeah, I did, and I kind of sort of saw it come to an end as well. Because when I was in my middle teens, and you know, just getting to know about, you know, the grown-up world of the music industry, there was all this stuff going on. I mean, Pebble Mill was like it was like Maida Vale was in London at the time. Also, they were just producing in-house music for broadcast, mostly on Radio 2. By the lorry load. I mean, there were different bands and orchestras in these studios all day, every day. because the BBC then had an agreement as part of its charter that they had to produce a certain percentage of their music in-house. They couldn't just play records all the time. And there was an agreement, and it was actually called the Needle Time Agreement, that they came to with the union. And then one day, I can't remember when, the BBC said, "Oh, we've had enough of this. We just want to be able to play records all the time if we want to." And the musicians union pretty much said, "Oh, okay, all right." And it all started to ebb away. And as Garry mentioned, somebody who I knew very much when I started, Johnny Patrick, at ATV, which became and all the regional centres, Birmingham, Manchester, had their regional ITV studios. So there was all this content being made, as well as what was coming out of London. There was a lot of stuff that was coming from different parts of the country. And it kept a lot of musicians very busy. Because in every town, there'd always be like and it wouldn't be that many players. There'd always be like, I don't know, 30 players who always were the first call guys. And Garry mentioned one of Birmingham's distinguished drummers, Jerry Green. And these guys there was always this little team of players who were always the first call for these things. But there was so much work around that it would trickle down to those of us, on the next rung down the ladder, to the point that when I was 16, I got hired by Johnny Patrick to play at this massive international circus at the National Exhibition Centre. And I did my first proper grown-up broadcast with proper grown-up musicians as a part of that, BRMB Radio, and as a 16-year-old. And that would be unthinkable now. But there were a lot of players around. In real terms, there were lots of drummers around, but the general standard was nothing like it was today. So if you could play pretty good and if you could read pretty good, you were really very much in the reckoning, even as a teenager, to be able to really get a foothold on the local scene. And I felt this carried on. It seemed to stay pretty buoyant until about 1983 or 84. And it seemed to me at the time that after that, it all started to, I don't know, things were going on politically in the country. There was a lot of unemployment. And that's when it all sort of started to ebb away. And I thought that I was going to have to look further afield to kind of go to the next step, because all those good things that had been going on in the late 70s and early 80s when I was getting started in Birmingham, they were all not really quite there anymore. So that was when I started to think about broadening my horizons. If I could have continued to do all these nice gigs in Birmingham, I probably would never have left. I mean, why would you?
Pete, yeah. I mean, as Peter is saying, I mean, I can remember that the BBC had, I think it was 7 full-time orchestras, and they very gradually cut that 7 down to, well, cut it down to 5, then cut it down to 3. I mean, there was the Midland Radio Orchestra at Pebble Mill.
We have our own.
There was the Northern Dance Orchestra. There was the Scottish Radio Orchestra, and very, very gradually, all of this just I don't know, cost cutting, I suppose. You get people who aren't interested in music, but they're interested in money, and they're all accountants. And the accountants looked down and said, "Oh God, you're paying 16 guys to sit in the studio here at Maida Vale, I mean, we can't afford that." And very, very gradually, it just all disappeared.
Yeah, but therein lies the irony. I mean, what do the BBC pay Gary Lineker every year to talk about football? Something like £2 million.
I was going to say 1.75 million, I think.
Yeah, you could do a lot of big band sessions for that amount of money.
You certainly could.
Which actually might bring a lot of pleasure to a lot of people, all of whom are suddenly going to have to start to pay for the television licenses. You know,
one of the other nice drummers in Birmingham, apart from your father, who was excellent player, of course, was Lenny Jackson. Pete, you remember Lenny Jackson?
I do, yeah, very well. Yeah, there were all these guys, and these are my first memories of you. Is when my dad would go to Yardley's on a Saturday morning, and there was all this team of the kind of local Birmingham drum mafia. I mean, Mike Evans was running the shop. You'd be there. Lenny Jackson, Morris Mills, Tony Piers, all of these, really good,
Tony Levin,
solid drummers. Really
Tony Levin was there.
Take care of business.
Yeah.
That's right, of course.
I can remember going into Mike, dear old Mike, who was, as we know, Pete, was tragically killed on an accident on the M5, a freak accident as well.
Absolutely.
But he ran Drumland, which was on what they used to
Navigation Street,
Navigation Street and Hurst Street on the corner.
Yeah, that big corner with a big glass frontage. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, well, it used to be in the old days when I was going for my lessons. It was called Chetwynd's Corner, that was, and it was when the Teddy Boys and the draped suits all came in. You could look in the window there, and it was all full of the Teddy Boy outfits, But eventually, of course, Mike Evans took over those premises. I can remember.
Right.
I don't think it was Drumland. I think it was when he had the shop at Snow Hill. I went in there one Saturday morning for a pair of brushes or something, fairly early, and the night before I'd been to Birmingham Town Hall to see the Oscar Peterson trio with Ed Thigpen. And when I went into the shop, there was nobody there but this gentleman standing with his back to me, and I can see him now with a beautiful dark brown leather long coat with the collar up, and Mike Evans just said, "Garry, Ed Thigpen," and I couldn't believe it. And just a quick story. I got talking to him, and Mick said, "Oh, this is a local drummer who plays in the big bands. This is Ed Thigpen." I said, "Well, I came to see you last night with Oscar Peterson. Absolutely wonderful, Ed. Lovely to meet you," and all that. We had a little chat, and all of a sudden, Ed Thigpen said, "Oh, I've got to go." He said, "I've got to get to London. I think he said I'm playing at the Festival Hall." And he said, "Where's Snow Hill Station?" And I in those days, I'd got a little red mini Countryman, the one with the wooden pieces on the side.
Yeah, the half-timbered estate car.
Yeah, the half-timbered estate, And I said, "It would be my pleasure to take you there, And we went out and got into this car, and I can remember Ed Thigpen saying to me, What a fabulous little shooting break." And I took him round to Snow Hill Station and shook his hand, and off he went, But yeah, great, really.
Yeah, we've got Tom Lang has basically said he used to go to Yardley's on Saturday mornings to get gigs. That was the place to be. So it's obviously there.
The Tom probably. Hiya, Tom. Tom, can you remember the name of it was John Lane, I think, wasn't it? It used to be the in charge of the drum department down there, and people would get in touch with John Lane. Can you remember John Lane at all, Peter, or was that before your time?
I think that's before my time. My earliest memories of Yardley's was when Mike Evans was there, before he went to Drumland.
Yeah, but people would get in touch with John Lane during the week, and you could go in on a Saturday, and very often he'd say, "Have you got a gig tonight? You know, there's one at Smerick Baths or with Charlie Farnsbarnes that's in his band, you know, or whatever it was, you know."
Tom, just put it in the comments and I'll pass on to Gary. As I say, thanks guys for watching. If you're watching on anyone else's channel, please just comments only on the Palace Drum Clinic channel, because I can't bring them forward 5 or 6 up at the moment. So if you want to comment, ask the guys a question or anything, make sure you're on the Palace Drum Clinic watching this on the Facebook group. Lots of people watching, thank you very much. John D. Wilson, Mike Wilson as well. Thank you very much for watching. We have got an Andy Ward is basically putting a question to it, but I just want to carry on. So Gaynor's actually said, have times ever been as hard as they currently are for live musicians? I think we need to take this last 4 months out of the equation, but would you say things for live musicians, gigging musicians, is it hard? Peter, I want to come to you for that one. Is it the hardest it's ever been?
Well, up until March the 18th, and oh God, well, I remember my last proper working day before the lockdown started, because I was doing a big band record with Nick Ross's band at Abbey Road, and we were all sitting around there saying, "Oh, well, this is a nice way to end your career, isn't it? How we all laugh." You know, 5 months, whatever it is, 5 months later, almost here we are. But prior to that, I was doing great. I was doing fine. I was doing. I actually, when I left London and moved to Sussex in 2014, I just kind of got the yen to start freelancing again, which is something I hadn't really done very much of in the previous few years. I'd just been doing things with my big band and other projects that I got involved in, and I kind of stepped away from the kind of cut and thrust of freelancing. And when I don't think there's any particular connection. It's just when I moved out of London, it just felt like something that I wanted to get back to. And in the intervening, well, within about a year, I had got back to a point where I was as busy as I've been in the mid 1990s, which was probably the busiest time of all for me. And right up until we got to where we were at the early part of March, I've been doing really well. Very, very buoyant. So no, it's until this wretched virus came along to ruin everything. I was doing great, and that was having taken. I think that through the first half of my 40s, I spent most of my time in the Ivy, in places like that, and, eating and drinking myself to a standstill. And then started just focusing on the big band. And then when we came out of London, I just wanted to be a freelance gigging musician again. And I, really, I did get it back very quickly.
Do you think it's a case where, because I've been very lucky, I've been busy and everything else. But do you think it's not advertised as much than it used to be? Because obviously it used to be all the big stuff happening all the time, but now it's also like localized. Do you think that maybe what Gaynor, she maybe not have heard about it because obviously it's more localized because there's much more going on than actually people actually realise? Do you think that's
maybe, Matt. I think again, it depends which genre of music you're in, really. I think, isn't it? Because to me, it seems to be quite fragmented, really. I mean, for me, as I said, I'm basically a jazz player, big band, but I ran my own band for a long time. In fact, Dear Pete was a member of the band for quite a while.
Many happy years. You funnily enough, obviously mindful that we were going to be getting together this evening. I was thinking about that earlier today, and I started working with your band in 1982, and you had all the best gigs, all all the stuff at the Metropole, down at the NEC, Albany, the Royal Angus, all the big hotels and all the spots where those big corporate events would take place around Birmingham. There was you and there was I guess Alan Hemus, but between those two bands, that was it, sewn up at that time in the early 1980s.
Yeah.
And we were out all the time.
We'd never have a Friday or a Saturday off, would we? There was always something going on, and we'd always do the Lord Mayor's Ball and the Motor Show Ball.
All that. Council House and all the things from Martin Hone, and so on.
That's it.
Just very occasionally, I can remember just occasionally you might get a gig with a not very big budget, and you just take like a quintet or a sextet, and you play yourself. I could have my pick of a half a dozen other things.
Yeah.
Those nights, and that's really how it was. It was
I'm sure you will remember, Pete. When I was lucky enough to get the gig with the band on the QE2, when I very first went on, you've done the QE2 with other bands as well, but when I very first went on, which was in '84, there was probably, I don't know, 26, 28 musicians on board the QE2. There was a 11-piece band, which was Tommy, what was his name, from Southampton? Tommy Hawkins from Southampton. Then there was a 7-8-piece band. There were 2 quartets, a duo, 2 cocktail pianists, the 6 girl dancers. It was tremendous. But when when Tommy went off and I got promoted to have the big band, I started off playing myself. And because we had a lot of different cabaret acts coming on, some of them American, some British ones, I found it quite difficult to direct the band and play drums at the same time. And I got you to come on, and you came in and did a great job for me from that point of view. And I was just directing the band from the front with my wife Tina Law doing the singing from the front, Yeah, good days, and we kept that going up until about '87, really. And then I did a couple of months with a 6-7-piece band on the Cunard Countess in the Caribbean as well, which I played myself, of course. It was lots and lots of diverse work. Sorry, Pete, but towards the end, you know as well as I do, to make it work, we used to split the band down to probably what was about a 10 or a 12-piece. We had PDChatshow and the 2 girls on the front, alto, tenor, trumpet, trombone.
It was 4/4 and 4. It was 4 blowers, 4 rhythm section, and the 3 singers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do all the best of the middle of the road pops, not because people wanted to get up and boogie, didn't they? And of course, it was good. It was good, but it very gradually, I don't know. I think I was a bit too old-fashioned, probably. I didn't want to move with the times. And
things change, and music was changing a lot around about that time.
Of course.
But I do remember that the first time I went on the QE2 with your band, that to me was like a picture of this like broader horizon of the music industry that existed outside of our little comfort zone around Birmingham, Coventry, Wolverhampton, etc. And it was like I look at the bigger world outside, and I found that very inspiring, and it made me want to explore that further. And which in the years immediately thereafter, between 1988 and 2002, I went off on this kind of odyssey of of all kinds of adventures and hijinks.
Some of which were very successful, and some that weren't.
They were indeed, yeah. And I have no regrets about any of it.
Good for you, good for you, Pete.
The various activities and achievements that were clocked up during that period, and then following a week in Europe with our ture Sandoval, I arrived in Elstree in Hertfordshire at the end of 1992, and then I had to start all over again. It was like, okay, right, this is done now, and it's like, you know, make or break. It was like starting a whole new career from with a lot of experience, which you know, and I'm very grateful to you for so much of that, because when I landed in London, I was 29 years old, and I was competing with drummers who were 10 years younger than who were just like coming out and trying to get a foot on the ladder, as I was.
Yeah.
Because I've got all this additional experience, I was really moved forward very quickly.
I mean, talking about I'm just thinking to myself here about this situation. I was lucky enough, and you knew Martin Hone, who ran the opposite block, and he got involved with one of the princes out in Dubai, who was a very, very keen car enthusiast, and this prince wanted to run a Grand Prix in Dubai, and of course I'm talking now about 1980-ish, 80-81 I think it was. You didn't actually come out with us for that, but I took the band out to Dubai.
No, I didn't get on board with you guys until '82.
Yeah, I think so. It would be before you came on board. But I took the band out to Dubai for the week, and it wasn't a proper Grand Prix. Funnily enough, it's Silverstone this weekend, isn't it? But Lewis Hamilton wasn't there or anything like that. But it was like a pseudo Grand Prix, and I can remember that they hired a DC-10 to take us all out there, and I took the big band out there, and Tina, who's my wife now, singing, and there was Sterling Moss and every top racing driver that you could think of on the plane, and we went out there and did this. And we on the Friday night we did what was called the World Champion Grand Prix Racing Drivers Ball in the I think it's called the Crystal Ballroom in the Hyatt Regency, right on the front of Dubai. And then we flew back overnight, and we landed at Heathrow very early in the morning. I went home, had a few hours sleep, and at night I had a 5-piece gig for the Alf Church Women's Institute with a fish and chip supper on the night that we came back.
But that's it, isn't it? That to me epitomises the industry.
That sums up the diversity of the business, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, one minute you'd be doing something absolutely kind of A-list, you know, room full of celebrities, and the next minute you're down at the local church hall doing something completely different. But the other thing, what I was thinking about earlier today was those once a month Sunday nights that you used to do at the Hen and Chickens at Oldbury.
Great nights, weren't they?
Incredibly popular. Well, I remember, you know, I would always get down there about like 5 or 5:30 to get, you know, set the drums up and so on. And then at about, for a gig that started about, I don't know, 8:15 or something, Ken Burrows had opened the doors at like 6:30 or something, and people would run across the room to get the best seats. They would just run the length of that room.
You can't sit there, you're sitting in my seat.
yeah. And but the you know the excitement that people had for music back then.
Do you know,
And
Peter? I ran that from 1974 up until 1996 for 22 years.
wow.
The first Sunday in the month, and I only ever missed two Sundays when I think Peter Charles fronted the band, and that was probably through illness or holiday or something. Yeah. No. That was one hell of a residency. That was.
It really was, and it was so popular as well. You know,
I can remember you, Pete.
It.
I remember you turning up one night. You said, "I've got my new Ludwig drum kit, Gary," and you had this fantastic gold sparkle
the gold one.
Ludwig
kit.
Yeah. With I think was it a 26-inch bass drum? Or 24?
Yeah, well, what that was, I got to know some of the guys at Ludwig through the distributors, Benson Park in North London. And it was just about the time that Selma had bought Ludwig. And I asked Ludwig if they would build me, because the first thing Selma did when they took on Ludwig was they got rid of Buddy Rich, because the chief was paying him. It was a paid endorser. And Selma, the accountants took one look at that. Right, that's going.
Well, they were. I think they were paying him $1,000 a week to play Ludwig drums.
Whatever it was,
That's what Bill Ludwig told us in Chicago.
Right, but as soon as the new owners come in and take a look at that, that's going to be going. So I managed to ask them. I said, "Could you make me a set of drums to the exact same spec that you used to make the drums for Buddy, but in a different color?" Because they'd had this issue with the marine pearl being so thick that they were having to tack the seams. Do you remember that? They used to. It looked like somebody had gone over it with like a gun and tacked it.
It spoiled it completely, didn't it?
Yeah.
Completely.
So I had them make me this set in gold sparkle, which I used, I don't know, probably about 15 to 20 times. And it's still sitting in my mother's house. And,
it used to sound great, particularly the bass drum. I mean, with my little Premier kit, I used to sit in front of it. Yeah.
Well, I used to put, and there's still one on. I'm sure there's still one on the bass drum, and I've got several spare. I used to put Evans hydraulic black heads on that bass drum.
Right.
With no damping. Okay, so it was. You know what an Evans hydraulic is like. It's
sure.
On a 16 by 26 bass drum with no damping, you could get right down into a really low frequency and have all the power and projection, but without any of the overtone. One of these.
Well, guys,
I always remember that drum kit. Wonderful.
As you can notice tonight, this is down memory lane, isn't it? So it's but wonderful stories and. John Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Gary and I talk about every time we get together.
It's never a dull moment when we've got Gary.
Can you remember, Pete? Can you remember? That's where we start.
John Anderson says, "Good evening, all, and big hello to my great friend and mentor of many years, Gary. He's up in Scarborough."
Hiya, John.
Well, I'm going to have to ask some of these questions now. There's many kit questions. Coming along. The first one, because obviously, Gary, you obviously, like all of us, you most probably started most of us off with spreading the disease, which obviously is not the disease we're talking about, but drum collecting. As it's really like to call it, we've got the disease. You obviously, at one point, you told me you had over 20 kits and over 90 snare drums, and you've lost count on your cymbals. A couple of questions. First of all, Peter Williams says, "Hi, Matt. Could you ask Gary if he still plays the DW Peter Erskine jazz kit, a lovely sounding drum kit?" I think
yes, I do. Yeah.
There we go. So that's great. Also, Richie Burns, because obviously, we've talked about a lot of, you, but obviously we haven't talked about many of yours, like drumming's like heroes, becomes friends, and all kind of stuff throughout your time in the industry. And Richie Burns says, Let me just bring us to say, it said, "Hi Gary, love your drum shows, and obviously, you know, you've done many drum shows. I have been to many of them and loved them. Do you still own Ronnie Farrell's kit? How did you get to come by it?" I love this story, so I'm going to sit back and listen to it.
Yes, I've still got it. Fortunately, I got to know Ronnie quite well. And by a strange coincidence, you mentioned in Ronnie Verrill, only last week I was listening on an old-fashioned cassette. Ronnie used to leave me messages on my answer phone many years ago, and years and years ago, I recorded quite a few of these messages. I must play them to you, Matt, and to you, Pete, sometime, because they're quite hilarious, really. And it's partly to do with what this question is. I had a call from Ronnie, and he said, I'm doing a gig, Gary, at a place called Broadway. Do you know it? I said, yes, I do, Ron. It's down in the Cotswolds. And I said, I'll come down and meet you. So I went down there and met up with him. And in the break, I was in the band room with him, and he said, well, I've had a bit of good news, Gary. He said, I've just been given 10 television shows. I'm going to join the Skinnerettes in the Frank Skinner show, you know. And I said, oh, wonderful. He said, and it's good money as well. That's great. You know, I said, well, absolutely superb. And I said, the trouble is, I said, are you going to play on this kit? Now, the kit that he got was 22-inch bass drum, 13 by 9, a 16 and an 18 floor tom in white marine pearl Premier. And it was the kit that he played basically with the Sid Lawrence band, and he had that kit for what, 25, 26 years, I think he said. But the trouble was, on this particular night, every time he hit the bass drum, the rap on either side of the spurs, he went bump, and the rap would go like that, you know, and it was all loose. And I said, well, you can't go on television with that, Ron, you know. He said, well, I'll have to, you know. He said, you had a couple of endorsements with Premier, didn't you? I said, yes. He said, have you still got any contacts there? I said, well, in my day, it was Rex Webb and Roger Horrobin and Eddie Haynes. I said, but yeah, the guy there now is Steve Jordan. He said, can you get in touch with them and see if you can do anything? So maybe they'll re-wrap my kit, or maybe they'll give me another kit. I said, well, I don't know about give you one, Ron, you know, but I'll have a word. So I had a word with Steve Jordan. I said, there's a legend, Ronnie Verrill. He's going to go on television for 10 weeks on the Frank Skinner show, and his kit's falling apart, Steve. He said, well, what's he got? And I told him what he got or what he wanted. He said, by the strangest of strange coincidence, he said, Steve White has just done a clinic tour for us. He's done 6 clinics with exactly those sizes in white marine pearl. He said, so we'll let Ronnie Verrill can have that. So I rang Ron and told him. And I'll have to play this tape to you, because very often I would ring Ronnie, and Gloria, his wife, might answer the phone, or he wouldn't be there, and I'd leave him a message, and then he'd ring me back and I wouldn't be there. But 2 or 3 times on this tape, he said, oh, thanks ever so much, Gary, for getting in touch with Premier and trying to get me this drum kit. He said, you have told them that I don't want to pay any money for it, haven't you? Because the big thing in Ron's life, of course, was he used to say, I love the GGs. And of course, whenever you saw him in the band room, apart from having a pint and a Scotch chaser, he would have the racing paper, whatever that was called. I don't know anything about horse racing, but he used to bet on the horses, you know. And at one point I said to him, you know, well, you've made plenty of money, Ron. He said, no, I haven't. He said, I've been married 3 times. He said, either my wives have had my money or the horses have had it. I've eaten it. But anyway, we went along to premiere, and he saw this drum kit. Did you ever go to premiere, Pete, at Wixton, at Leicester? I don't know.
A
whether
long
you
time
did.
ago, yes, I did.
But, yeah, but the on the new building, where they got the kind of turret at the front and the double drum kit up in the to show it off, you know. But up there was like a trial room where they got several kits set up, and actually they took us out for the proverbial steak and chips at lunchtime, and then I'd been around 2 or 3 times, but they took us around the factory, and Ronnie was really interested in how they made the drums. And we went into this room, and there's this virtually brand new kit. But of course, they couldn't sell it again because Steve White had used it on 6 occasions. But it was white marine pearl and all the right sizes. And Steve Jordan said, well, will this do for you, Ronnie? He said, oh yeah, fantastic, fantastic, yeah, it'd be great, that would. So we carried it down the stairs at the back, and Ronnie had got his car at the back, and he opened the back of his car, and he got his old kit in the back there. And Steve Jordan said, the skip is over there, Ronnie. And he said, oh no, he said, I think do you want it, Gary? I don't want to throw it in the skip. Do you want it? I said, I would love it, Ron. I said, I'll try and do it up a little bit, which I did, you know, stuck all the wrap down and all the rest of it, you know. But he got a couple of heads, and he got a head with Ronnie Bell on the front and all that. So I've still got that kit. But just as an aside from that particular story, and he'd got a gig at night with what's the name of the vibes player? He used to play with the quintet. They used to do like a Benny Goodman quintet. I forget.
Roger Nobes.
Yes, I think it might be. Yeah. Anyway, he got this gig at night, and he said, "I'll be using the kit tonight." I forget where it was, and off he went with great excitement with this kit, all for nothing, of course. The very next morning, my telephone went. Gary, he said, it's Ron. I said, oh, how are you, Ronnie? I said, how did you get on with it? He said, bloody terrible. He said, I hadn't got the bracket for fixing the small tom-tom on top of the bass drum. He said, so I had to play with just the bass drum and the snare drum and 2 floor tom-toms. He said, have you got that chap's name at Premier? So I gave him Steve's number, and he rang up Steve, and I found out afterwards that Steve and Steve's son, I think they went and met Ronnie somewhere to take the bracket, which he hadn't got, you know, to hold the 13 by 9 rack on, you know. What a character, Ronnie Bell. I loved him to bits. He was wonderful, really.
And obviously,
I remember going. Sorry, just a quick one. I remember going to a gig at the Library Theatre at Solihull and meeting him there. And this was with the Sid Lawrence band, and Mike Burney was in the band, and Andy Smith and all that. And of course, they did the sound check, and they said, "Oh, we're going down the pub for a drink. You're coming down with us, Gary?" I said, "Well, I don't really want a drink, but I'll come anyway." And I went down to the pub, and I mean, they had changed, but they hadn't got the band jackets on. It was about 10 to 8. And I kept saying, you know, have to get your skates on, lads, won't you? You know, and all that. I said, yes, okay. We've just got time for another drink. We'll just have a pint and a double Scotch chaser. And this is 10 to 8. And then they downed these, and we all ran up to the stage door at the Library Theatre. I always remember some of these stories, but I don't know how they survived it. Well, they didn't, of course, did they? I mean, Ronnie's gone, Mike's gone, and Andy Smith's gone, you know.
Yeah, in the long term, but back then, you know, a band like that, they'd be doing like 25 shows a month, and
and
absolutely. You know, there's a thing that sometimes happens with musicians. You get so match fit that you can start, you know, taking liberties in certain areas and getting away with it. But then when the gigs drop off a bit and you're still taking liberties and partying hard, and that's when the playing can suffer.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? Another quick story that Ronnie told me, that when they were doing the Sunday night at the London Palladium, and Danny Moss was in the band, they were in the pub, having done the sound check. This was with Ted Heath, the Ted Heath band, and it got to whatever it was, 10 to 5 to 8, and they were on at 8 o'clock, and they all, come on, we better drink up, and they all drank up, or most of them drank up, and dashed out, got onto the stage with the curtains drawn at the Palladium, 8 o'clock. Ted Heath counts the band in, da dee da da do da, off it goes. Danny Moss was still in the wings, and the curtains opens, and there's only 4 saxes and not 5. And apparently, they got to the end of the signature tune, and Danny Moss walked in with his tenor and sat on the end, and he said, "I'm terribly sorry, Ted." And Ted said, "That's all right, you're sacked."
Well, there we go. There we go. I've got some questions here, but as I say, just to give people a little bit of insight, we worked that out that obviously Ronnie's kit, that kit actually was the kit actually he played with the Jack Parnell Orchestra. Obviously, they did the Muppets, and obviously Ronnie was Animals.
Yeah.
You have got Animals kit. So at one point when we all get together in a big event, I think that needs an airing, doesn't it? We just want to see things flap about.
When he first had it, Matt, he said he had it at Elstree. Which is obviously where they were recording the Muppets and all that, you know.
Actually, I just remember this on my time feed this morning on Facebook, that for some reason just happened to pop up. It was on the Les Dawson show. I think it was Sid Lawrence band, but it was Skin Deep, and obviously Ronnie Farrell and Jack Parnell as well playing that one. You've obviously seen that clip many times, but I've seen it many times, and it's just chalk and cheese. It's like, you know, Jack the gentleman, it's like lovely technique, and Ronnie's just like, he's like a little rogue on that little kit, but boy, they did swing, didn't they? So we've got, I've just noticed time with time's flying past as it always do. Andy Ward, here we go, guys. Hi, Matt, Pete, Gary, enjoying the vibe tonight. Hi, Gary. This comes that different question, apparently. Do you have, I think it's basically towards, do you have a signature feel that always finds its way into your playing? Nice and easy. For me, yes, you have to work out what it is. Pete?
Yeah, I've got a few things that I wouldn't say they were like signature ideas. I've got this whole kind of load of stuff that I can fall back on. If the creativity is not quite as flowing and lucid as I want it to be, I've got stuff I know I can do that I can always, that is always going to suffice. I like to be able to play. It's like starting out with a blank sheet of paper. I like to be able to play completely off the cuff and spontaneously, and be as connected with the music as it's possible to be. But sometimes that just doesn't happen, mate. You just might not feel like on your best game, or you might have had a lousy journey to the gig, or the acoustic of the room might be a bit challenging, or there might be a bass player on the gig you don't particularly like playing with. So that's the time when I'll dip into the stuff that I know will always get me by. But really, what I'm always, what the goal for me is to be able to play absolutely straight off the top of my head and onto the drums.
I couldn't agree with Pete more.
That's spontaneous.
Absolutely with you, 110% there, Pete.
And I've got quite good at it, because that's how I practice. That's the way I practice for that spontaneity, rather than playing like a lot of rudiments and stuff. Because it's like anything, you get good at what you repeat. And, so
I think in my early days, I probably, you'd practice all the rudiments and all the rest of it, and you tend to go down the rudimental route, really. But once I got involved with talking to Kenny Clare a lot, and going and watching Ken play and talking to him a lot, I learned such a lot by just kind of sitting out watching him and on the side of the stage. He basically he used a lot of flams, kind of 3-stroke roughs, that type of thing. So he's playing all it type of thing, you know. And I'm with you, Pete. There, I like to. For me, how can I explain this? My first priority is the music, not the drums. What used to turn me on in my younger days, when when I was quite young, my mum and dad used to go out dancing on a Saturday night, and they'd drop me off at my grandparents'. And of course, in those days, it was all about the radio. I think television was hardly coming in, really. On the radio, it was okay. You'd get your proverbial Glenn Millers and all that, you know, but it would be the Ted Heath Band, Edmundo Ross, all those kind of bands, really. And it was the music that I related to. So I've always tried to, my drumming, I've tried to enhance the music, make everybody else in the band feel comfortable with what they're doing, not get in the way. Okay, you like to try and be clever occasionally, but I think I've probably gone down a much simpler route of playing, probably over the last 10 years, basically. Just get into the groove of whatever it is you're playing, kick the band along, and do some nice fills here and there. But nearly always you'll see Pete and I, well, and you, Matt, we all do a lot of sight reading gigs, and I see a 2-bar break or a 4-bar break, and if I'm honest, 95% of the time I go like that, and it's not premeditated what I'm going to play. No. Okay, if you're doing the proverbial American Patrol with Glenn Miller, you know, you're expected to play. Type of thing. Yeah. But I don't. On the other, I don't even do that now. You know, I just play what comes into my head at the time.
Yeah, I'm just going to interject here that I think Pete will be in agreement with this. Like watching Garry play, and obviously, you know, learning from him. I don't think there's any drummer who hasn't learned from Garry throughout. You know, who's actually known him. I know. I've learned a lot. It's like listening to Garry play. It's like every single piece that he does, you know, sometimes has like a little drum feature or something. You can hear that particular tune, whatever he's playing, within his drums.
That's what I try to do. I'm trying to do that.
Yeah, well, you do. I think you're one of the best people to do it, because I was just watching a little, you know, getting some promotion done, so I watching little clips. Some of them we obviously couldn't use because other people have it, but it's like, as soon as you were playing, it's like, well, I know that tune straight away, and then it's like counting the band in, and bosh, it was there. You know, you have that ability of, you know, you've always said, and we've said this many, many times on the PD Chat Show, it's like, are you playing the drums or are you playing music? And obviously,
absolutely.
We're all musicians, aren't we? You know, that is it. It's just happened to be that we're one of the best, you know, so.
Well, again, Pete and I have talked about this over the years, and I know Peter will, you know, you might do a 32-bar solo, and you'll have a tune going in your head, whatever it might be, you know, Lady Be Good, whatever, you know.
Yeah, that's one of my go-to choices, actually.
Yeah, but again, it's a good tune, Pete, and it's a nice flowing melodic line, isn't it? And you can play.
Well, I always try to pick things where there's some space, kind of enough going on rhythmically, not too busy. There's some of the bebop tunes because you need that kind of those little gaps and bits of clear air in the rhythm of the melody to be able to conclude one idea and kind of work up the next one. And I always, what I always do is, because if you're thinking about a piece of music as a template off which to construct a solo, then it's keeping you far more connected with the music than counting bars and beats as it goes.
Yeah. I was actually it is relevant, but the other day I got my son, because obviously unfortunately he's rubbed off his Star Wars love, because obviously for me, I said, son, what's this? And I actually played the Imperial March, down, 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 by playing it, I was just messing about, and then added tom toms. Actually, toms are actually pitched for some reason.
That's good.
He went,
that's good.
That's Darth Vader. And even early on, so I've got a little kit there for him, who's Ken Hickey built it for him, bless him. Loves it. And the first thing I said to him, and sat down the kit, and he said he loves it. I said, Harvey, think of a tune and then play it. And I haven't taught him anything apart from paradiddle. It's like you can hear the tunes actually come through, and it's just basically, it's like, I'd rather people say, are you teaching him? No, I'm teaching him to play music, and I think that's the way that we should all. Hopefully we approach all instruments in that kind of sense, rather than just like, showing off in that kind of sense. So
I've never understood really, Matt, why people they'll like set a drum kit up in the back of the garage and just whack away at the drums, and it is nothing whatsoever to do with music, and I just can't get that. I can't get my head around that at all. I mean, a lot of it, I mean, last week, I've probably done a bit more practice during the lockdown than I have for quite a long time, because under normal circumstances, I'd be playing once a week with John Ruddick's Birmingham Big Band and with the Stadium Big Band once a week. And we're doing a little jazz gig with my wife, Tina Law, with the trio. I'd probably play 3 times, and if you're doing that, I don't need to. When I go in the garage, sometimes I've got a Bill Sanders practice pad, and I've still got my Bill Sanders practice kit up in the loft there. The best practice kit on the market, Bill Sanders' kit, and I've had that for 25 years at least. But I find that. What's the best way to explain it? That it's the music that turns me on rather than just the drums. And I mean, people appreciate, well, and you all, Matt, because you've heard a lot of these, but I've got some of the play-along things with, Gordon Goodwin and Bob Florence and all those. And I'll go up into my studio in the loft and stick it on, and there's some difficult stuff to play in there, but it's the music that turns me on, and I express myself, of course, through my instrument, which is the drums, but it's the music, really.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, a lot of younger people, I think they just want to play the drums. They don't really want to play the music. They set the kit up in the back of the garage and whack away, and I don't know. It's not very musical.
I think a lot of that's to do with where the influences are coming from, because I see a lot of like people just shredding on a set of drums on Instagram or something, whereas even people quite a little bit younger than me grew up with like seeing bands on television. I mean, for a lot of the time it was a pretty mediocre show, but Top of the Pops got generations of youngsters into the idea of seeing bands with guitar players and singers and keyboard players and drummers, which if you're watching grime or something, there's nothing going on like that at all. There's probably no instruments. So instruments have been hived off into this kind of strange hinterland of it's like 60-second video athletics on social media.
Mm.
And kind of contextualized away from the actual function of contributing to a piece of music. And you know, I'm sure there are some young drummers out there who haven't actually found this out yet. But
Yeah.
you know, give them time.
Well, we're here to educate, and hopefully February we'll be doing the PD camp. So get yourself along to that. Hopefully, so we'll be the next month or so be able to get some more details out there. But obviously, booking things is a bit of an issue at the moment, but it will be happening. I've just noticed we're nearly at 10 o'clock, but Garry, I don't think we can leave today without just talking about the person who's been trying to hit you on the head all evening. It's dear old John Bonham behind you. Obviously, in yeah, it's the photos, it's not him. Now, obviously, I'm in the home of Redditch, which is obviously where you actually, well, Ashwood Bank was just down the road where you were basically lived and brought up. John was obviously there. We're coming up to 40 years of his death at the end of September. Can you just tell, quite because we've only got a few minutes, but can you just tell us briefly, because it's like some people actually think you was his first drum teacher, but that's not right. How did you meet John?
Well, John was probably 8 or 9 years younger than me. I think that would probably be about right. And I was living in Ashwood Bank at the time in the early 60s, before I moved up to the big city into Birmingham later on in the 60s. And one day, the front doorbell, if we could afford a doorbell in those days, but the door was not. And I went to the front door, and there was this lad standing there, and he just said, are you Garry Allcock? I said, yeah. And he said, do you play the drums and you're interested in cars? I said, yeah. And he said, oh, my name's John Bonham. He said, can we have a chat? He said, I've been recommended to come and have a chat with you. So I said, well, yeah, okay. I mean, I didn't know who on earth he was, you know. And he came into the house and we had a chat. I think I probably made him a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. I would think at the time, well, he told me that he'd just left school. So he's probably 15, 16. And I can remember him telling me that he was trying to decide, he was working in his father's building business, and he was trying to decide exactly what to do. He was very good at carpentry, from what he told me, and so he's probably going to be a carpenter rather than a brickie. But he also said that he was playing the drums with some local band. I forget what the band was called. You know, I think something like the Blue Star Trio or something like that. A friend of mine, Bill Harvey, used to play with them, and I think John took over from Bill, or whichever way around it was. But he was really. I did not teach him. I got a pad out on one of. I mean, he visited me on many an occasion after this. But the thing that I really remember about him was that he was a very heavy player, and he whacked this pad, and he'd got no idea of a downstroke and an upstroke at all. He just whacked it straight into the pad. And I just said to him, you know, you're going to do yourself a physical injury. I said, he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, da-da, da-da, da-da. And I got him kind of doing that. And then I said, now do a double beat, da-da, da-da. And that was the basis of what I didn't, well, I showed it to him, you know, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and a pad. But over the years, I got to know him quite well. I can remember when he had some kind of advanced royalties from one prior to Led Zeppelin, of course, with one of the bands, and he came up and he said, I want to show you this, Garry. And he got it out, and it was a cheque for £600. And he said, look at that, it's absolutely fantastic, £600. And he went out and he bought a second-hand Jaguar. I can remember. Then he came up and showed me this Jaguar. But at a later date, he bought, when he had made some real money, he bought a Jensen Interceptor, which used to be made in West Bromwich, and he bought the top of the range, the FF version. I remember he took me for, I think it was orange or yellow or something with cream upholstery, and he took me for a ride in it and frightened me to death. I can always remember that. And on another occasion, Pete talking about Mike Evans down at when he had the shop down at the bottom of Snow Hill. I went in one Saturday morning. I think I took one of my pupils in, get some sticks or something like that. I can't remember. But while I was in the shop, John Bonham came in, and he got his Rolls Royce outside, and he got little Jason with him as those days. He said, "Oh, I'm glad you're here, Gary. Come and have a look at this." And we went outside. He opened the boot with this Rolls Royce, and he got this little kit that Bill Ludwig had made for him for Jason in the back of it, you know. And also on one occasion, he had what would you call it? Like a hot rod, a hot rod. An incredible thing, and it was like an Austin 7 body with this fantastic, I forget what it was, a 6 or 8 cylinder engine, and great big wheels and tyres, like tractor tyres on the back and little ones on the front. And he said, "I want to show you my hot rod." And I said, "Where is it?" He said, "It's in Bristol Street Motors window as you're coming out of the city." And so we got in this car, and he took me up there, and we pulled up outside, and sure enough, there it was, and he'd loaned it. He knew somebody there, and they wanted to draw attention to it. And there it was, just on show in the window of Bristol Street Motors. What a character! What a character!
Well, the thing is, what a way to end a lovely evening of reminiscent stories. Obviously, we could be here for till 2021, really.
Yeah.
But we might well be.
Yeah,
it could well be.
But
why don't we?
Why don't we? Well, we'll still work. But no, guys, thank you ever so much. There's been lovely comments on saying so. Thank you very much. You know, sort of the music part of it. You know, playing the music. Very enjoyable evenings. Great stories. You know, life in drums and everything. Now, guys, thank you ever so much. We are back next week. Slight change next week. We've got an industry chat show. So the PD chat show is going into that with Dave from Hardcase and also Chris Bennett from Botwork Sticks. Just to give you an insight of actually, because we use all these products, but you know what actually goes into the manufacturing side of it. You know, it's like, you know, and then there's like the relationships between the people who use them and so on, their artists, and it's like, you know, how do they get the ideas, how they start. So that'd be really insight to stuff that you most probably use every single day, but you can hear the guys basically here from concept to basically where they are now. So thank you so much for watching. Let's say 8:30 tomorrow on the Palace Drum Clinic Facebook channel. Please obviously go to palacedrumclinic.com. We've got Instagram. We've been going for a few weeks now. It's PD Conversations over on Instagram as well. Look us up. And obviously the Palace Drumming Club. There's lots of things happening there. And I think I'm going live on Tuesday evening, just to basically so we've done a poll. So basically it's like just an insight into open and closed roles. You know, people want to know about these things, so I'm willing to help. So it's my absolute privilege to say thank you ever so much, Mr. Garry Allcock, for joining us. I know Pete has been enjoying himself because I've never seen him smile and laugh so much. So, so he's,
I'm very sparing with this kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's it for the whole year for Pete. Back to normality this week. But no, Garry, thank you ever so much for spending time. I say you've been a huge mentor, inspiration, friend to a lot of us. And I just
all of the above.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you for that. So
before we wind it up, Matt, can I wish Pete all the best for Monday, because he's got a rather nasty operation on Monday. All the very best, Pete.
Oh, it'll be fine.
Yeah, Pete's been a soldier on Monday. He'll tell you all about it on Saturday if he makes it that far. So, but yeah, but
I won't say keep your eyes open for Pete, but I won't say anything about it.
Yeah, yeah. But thank you again, Pete, for being absolutely amazing. I couldn't do this without you. Rob will be back next week as well, so we'll have the full team. Thanks again, Pete, and thank you again, Gary, and thank you guys for watching, because obviously we'll just be talking to ourselves, which again I say all the time, we love doing it, but it's always great to have your input on these things. So thank you ever so much, guys. Only one for me to say is have a good night, stay safe, and let's get back to what we're doing by being sensible. So thank you, guys. You take care, and we'll see you all again next week, 8:30 on the PD Chat Show. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Bye. Bye. All the best.